thing is really good. I think it should be out, and it should be out at every venue in the world, I think, and it's so timely. Do you get a lot of people telling you the film is really timely with the presidential thing coming up?
Well,
now
I
and
think as that every day there are articles all over the country.
Yeah.
About Giuliani leading the Republican
right,
pack,
right.
and it's becoming more and more appropriate. I think.
Okay, let me introduce you and we can talk about it
Yes.
and everything. And welcome very much to Conversation. A pleasure, a great distinct pleasure for me to welcome to the program. I'm going to say it right offhand, perhaps one of the best documentary makers that we have in our midst on planet Earth. I've just finished watching a day or so ago the full almost 2-hour program called, a documentary called Giuliani Time. It was produced by our guest, and he's a director and a producer of documentary footage, and his name is Kevin Keating. And Kevin, welcome very much, and congratulations.
Thank you, Harold. I'm glad you got a chance to see it.
It's a work of art. It is a work of art, high art, and you've done a magnificent job. And we're going to talk about the film. We're going to show a rather long clip about it and so forth. We want to let people know about it. It should be out all over the place. But would you please, in a sense, just share with the viewers your background, where you were born and raised a little bit, just a way to wade into it.
Sure, I was born here in New York City,
Right.
and left soon after. Much like I'm a contemporary of Giuliani's. We are the same age. And I was born here in the city as he was in Brooklyn. I was born in Manhattan. Both of us, at the age of 6, interestingly enough, moved to the suburbs. He to Long Island, I to Westchester, and he then went through an entire educational system entirely. As he says in the film, I never went to entered a classroom without first a prayer until he went to NYU Law School.
Right.
I, on the other hand, went to public schools, and I ended up going to a college in West Virginia, and because of the accelerated intensity of the Vietnam War, found myself politicized and majored in political science.
Because of the Vietnam thing, right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, right.
I think many of us had our lives altered utterly because of the contradictions around the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
That imperialist, horrible.
Tore the world apart, tore this country apart.
Yes.
It was something.
So Giuliani Time is a product of that struggle.
Yeah, on the education thing, you say in the film that he was raised in a family that was essentially mafiosa and that sort of thing, and he was raised in that kind of a context. What was the context within which you were raised? And where? Was it up in Tarrytown or where?
No, in Mamaroneck, New York.
Mamaroneck, great
Yes.
town.
I
yeah.
graduated from Mamaroneck High School, and an interesting blend of both extremely wealthy Wingfoot Golf Course, for instance, where I used to caddy for a lot of the
You
corporate.
caddied? You didn't play?
I was a caddy. I played on Mondays.
You relatively get good?
I got good. I shot at 88 when I was
How's your
15.
polo?
My polo non-existent. Although I did once take a tussle on a polo pony. I was doing a documentary that had what's her name? Anyway, at the end of the shooting, I said I want to show you how I can ride, and I got on the polo pony, and managed to fall off.
Like a Marx
Hilarious.
Brothers movie.
It was quite hilarious.
Yeah. Did they get it on tape?
They didn't, but they
Damn,
all
that would have been great for a laugh, wouldn't it? You know, like a horse pratfall, right?
Yeah.
But your family was liberal or radical,
no,
or how did
my mother was actually an America Firster.
Oh, really? Okay.
A petty, sort of bourgeois, petty bourgeois orientation, anti-Rooseveltian, and
anti-Roosevelt.
Very much so. You know, Roosevelt was a communist to a lot of people on my Republican side of my family. And
it was a Republican family, huh?
Yes, and on the other side was a working class Brooklyn orientation.
Your dad, you mean?
Yes, and that was not particularly articulated, but on my mother's side, very Republican. And so I came up sort of denuded of any kind of political orientation. I didn't know until college, and then being sucked into
You
the
hit
vortex.
that what year? What year?
I graduated in '67.
Right in the middle of the Vietnam?
Right in the middle of it. Found myself with Barbara Koppel.
Yeah, Barbara Koppel's great.
She and I met in college, and we went. Then I was a couple of years ahead of her, and we left and went to Boston, where I was going to graduate school at Emerson, and she was going to Northeastern.
What were you studying?
Theater.
Theater. You're an actor, thespian.
No, I wasn't sure. I knew I wasn't going to law school.
Director, right?
I was on my way to Suffolk Law School, and that summer, I was quite by accident interviewed by the head of the theater department, graduate level, and he gave me a conditional entrance, and I had to make a decision: law school, theater.
I think you choose wisely, theater.
I don't. I wish I'd gone to law school.
Law school, you'd be able to be making big money down on Wall Street.
Not the money.
You'd be following William constantly.
Yes,
yes.
Of
Okay,
course,
right. Because you were getting radicalized. You had not been in
I
high
was
school.
It wasn't radicalized. I was actually being educated and becoming much more, my orientation became much more materialist and real, rather than you know, being schooled in Business 101. I came to find I enjoyed studying the Constitution, and that became my political science psychology orientation.
Yeah, Barbara Coppola, you worked with her, and she did Harlan, and she did
She
USA?
did Harlan County, USA, which I was the cinematographer.
Right, you were, good.
Yes.
Didn't you win an award, or she did?
Well, she did.
Yeah, right.
Won the Academy Award in '76.
They didn't give you credit?
Well, they don't.
No, they didn't give you an award. There's no award.
No, that goes
cinematographers get it at the Academy
separately.
Award.
Separately.
But you're in the independent film world.
Yeah. So documentaries, there's not a distinction between cinematographers and sound recordists or mixers or any of the editing. They give this one feature documentary
to the director or producer.
Yeah. So Barbara won that for Harlan County, USA.
Yeah, it was great. It was good.
Oh, it's one of the
really. Yeah.
They just.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
And Barbara Trent was from that time too. Or Ron Contra. That was somebody.
I think a little later.
Yeah,
I've seen that film, and it's a great film. But with Barbara
Coppola, she did it in her garage.
And
Barbara Trent
happened.
did. She did it on just Social Security or something. Yeah.
But that's
precursor to the Final Cut Pro days now, where people can do it on their desktop. Thank God that's coming for the folks.
You can shoot and make your own movies.
But Barbara Coppola, you got involved in film then also.
But it was a traditional kind of introduction into the. We came back from Boston to, but they're active in the anti-war movement, and came back to New York, and Barbara got a job working for the Maisels, and that brought her into the world of documentary filmmaking, direct cinema, cinema verite, very, very Leacock Pennybaker, that whole school. And I was with her in part of that, but I was working in a commercial film studio as a gopher, and decided that where I was going to try to focus my apprenticeship skills would be as a cinematographer.
Okay.
So that's what happened. I came under the influence of a number of increasingly important and skilled cinematographers. Some people like Bob Fiore and Ted Churchill, the second generation of specialists in the handheld camera. And the technology was changing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was no longer the threaded up long Oricon sound on film cameras. They had the emergence of the Arriflex BL and the Eclair NPR, which had a quick change magazine.
This is all film.
All
16,
film.
any 35 or what?
Well, some 35.
Yeah.
There were, for instance, working with Bob Fiore as his assistant on a film that was directed by, had Bob De Niro in it. It was about being a draft dodger, directed by the Brian De Palma.
Yeah. Okay.
That was 35.
Yeah.
So that was, that was the atmosphere was charged. It was, for many of us, it was about social change, documentary, learning the technical sides of it. Of course, film is expensive, so you don't have did not have the opportunity to play. Now you have video.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful?
You can learn cinematography on your cell phone.
I know, it's wonderful. Do you
fantastic.
like that trend?
Of
You like
course.
the trend? There's a lot of, I know some guys who are in film. You say you're going digital, and they said they don't think there's any. You can get you still can't get the warmth.
Please,
of film, but they say that.
Please stop
but
with
it seems to me everything's going digital.
If you really,
I mean, that's the writing on the wall.
That's so bourgeois. Get into the aesthetics of granularity.
Well, artists often are very.
Save the art for later. Let's worry about social change first.
Oh well, that's
Let's change the world. Then you can change the art.
They had a hell of a time to get Picasso to paint the Guernica.
Well,
because there are artists who do not want to become involved in
then
the mundane political nonsense of the
then
day,
let them go suck off the bourgeoisie. That's all right. There are some of us who think it's important to make social change.
Yeah, right. And you're one of them.
Yes.
And you have been from your early youth.
That's why we made this film.
Yeah, this film is really, I want to tell you, this film is just absolutely great. It's so well done. You worked 6 years?
6 years.
When did you get the idea?
I didn't have the idea. The idea came to me in the person of Michael Ratner, who's the president of
Michael Ratner's a god.
Yes.
I mean, from the Center for Constitutional
Yes,
Rights.
he's a friend of mine.
Guy. Yeah.
And he was so upset by Giuliani's then record in late '98.
I was too.
By then there were about 15 or 16 major constitutional First Amendment-oriented lawsuits that Giuliani lost.
Not to mention it was over the horizon that was coming.
The what?
What was coming over the horizon.
So Michael came to me and said, what can we do at the CCR? What can we do? Can we make an informational kind of video to document this accumulation of horrible First Amendment violations? It was, Giuliani had quickly established he didn't care about what was legal or not legal as regards the Constitution. And that's what's going to happen nationally.
Well, that's what's the real danger. It could be out and out fascism. It could be very easily, much more easily than we might think.
Well, I think authoritarian. I think, John Dean just wrote a wonderful book the John Dean of the Watergate era,
Yeah.
and he wrote a book recently called Worse Than Watergate.
Oh.
His subsequent book basically is about the rising concentration of authoritarianism in our country.
Authoritarianism is built into the DNA of a whole lot of social organizing
Yes.
principles. It seems to me all institutions, certainly corporate institutions,
Yes.
are quasi-fascistic in their order.
Anti-democratic.
It's anti-democratic,
Yes.
so you don't want to call it that because it's all, and the educational system follows in that. They're going to teach the children to do, essentially the generic thing, teach children to do what they're told.
Yes.
That's essentially,
Yes.
all of our institutions are authoritarian.
well,
in
look
a
at
certain sense.
Giuliani's-
So anybody who's doing an authoritarian thing has a leg up in terms of, accepted reality that we've inherited out of history, it seems to me.
Oh, I agree. Well, look at Giuliani's history in Catholic schools. What's more authoritarian than having the Pope dictate, all the way down to the local school classroom, beginning with a prayer talking about fealty to the dictates of a Pope. But I think that
But it's the whole system.
yeah, it's the whole system.
And
so
the thing is, you're looking at the whole system
yes,
as somehow something.
and
James Joyce had Daedalus say, history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. That's the way I think.
well, some of us are a little more optimistic. History can be, I think.
No, I don't think it's so optimistic to say the question is, are we going to awaken?
Well, to change it. you
And
mean,
to recognize that what's coming out of history is a nightmare
and can be
of
rectified.
injustice.
And
It's been injustice all throughout since Cro-Magnon cave.
but it can be changed.
It
and
can
there are,
be changed, perhaps, if you have good films like Giuliani.
well, I hope
maybe.
so.
Yeah, right,
And that's
yeah.
why we made it. Michael came and said, what can we do in terms of an informational video that can be maybe on public access, for instance, many
Well, it was made
applications.
for public
right?
access, yeah.
And so I said, well, he said, I can raise some money and we'll get started and let's do
Yeah.
it professionally.
Okay.
As opposed to, trying to do something that is well-intentioned but not professional in terms of execution. So
Big difference there. The professional bona fides are important in terms of that, and
yes.
how much of it is like art? There's some people can. You ever try and make
Art
a
has
drawing?
nothing to do with
you ever
mine.
try to make a drawing like an artist does? That they've got something genetically.
Absolutely.
There's something there. It's a creative thing.
I think
You
so.
know.
Well, in the finer arts, yes, I
The
think that's true.
Balinese have a saying. The Balinese have a saying that I always liked. You're a Fuller fan, I am. He said, we have no art. We do everything as well as possible. That the artistic thing is there within the human spirit much more than we want to think among the folks and so forth. If they just got the capability to be able to have access.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
You know what I mean?
I think
Yeah.
that's very insightful.
In a sense, people are much more apt to adapt at being able to be an artistic, creative individual, living out not only their full biography, but also their full potentiality. And the system is so truncating of the potentiality of the people within human society because of the situation, the institutions that we have, that there is a revolution of some sort or another that is blowing in the wind, as Bobby Dylan used to say. It
Well,
seems
always.
to me.
Always. I think,
Always, you
yes.
think, yeah?
I think. Look, I'll subscribe to the dialectical nature of existence. That everything has its inherently has its opposite. Out of that clash comes a synthesis and something new, a transformative thing, a new approach, learning from the contradictions inherent in existing reality.
Don't want to go too far afield. How far back do we go on that loop? Homo sapiens come along the hominoid line about 200,000 years ago. 10,000 generations we appeared, our species. And, Stephen Jay Gould and Eldridge will tell us that the process of quantitative transformation is that you have quantitative change within a sort of more or less steady state system for a long time. And the actual transformative moment is a thing they call punctuated equilibrium. The speciation happens very rapidly, very quickly, but there's been a lot of gestating. Do you think we're maybe at that stage and we're coming to maybe the end of the human experience?
Well, I guess these
are
sort
we
of
closing quotes on history? Are we coming into a new relationship
Always.
to the cosmos? Or are we still based always in history? And we're going to be ever enthralled to the historical institutions?
Always new.
Even though they may be outdated by the zeitgeist.
No, always new. I think it's
Always
always
new.
emerging.
Always
Always
new.
emerging.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
always emerging. So the contradictions that give forth their opposites and their relative change,
Thesis,
it's constant.
antithesis,
Constant.
synthesis,
Yeah. Age,
Okay.
old Aristotle. I mean, all the dialecticians of history have been, and I think this
But
film.
there was a consciousness before there was Homo sapien.
Of
There was
course.
Homo habilis or
Of
something.
course.
And that is a different breed of cat than a self-reflective consciousness. And are we going to come in? Do you think? I saw Mr. President Carter on the television. They said, do we live in an elemental justice, a world of elemental justice for the whole of the system? And you have the whole of the system. There's 100 trillion cells in the human organism. They all matter. And do we live in a system of elemental justice? He said, of course not.
I think it's
we
striving.
never have.
Striving.
We don't.
Striving.
Is it possible? Is it impossible that we can live in an appropriately organized system where the biography and the capability of every human being within an ecological context is able to realize itself?
Of course.
It is.
It's possible.
But it never has been.
We're emerging. We're changing. We're going forward. That's what makes us human. Yes, qualitative change is constant. It's
And
just,
we can't know what that would be because we're like in the womb.
No, but we're going.
And it's synergetic resonancy out into the space beyond where we'll be if we transcend our condition.
If we prevent the Giuliani types, the know-nothings, the Neanderthals,
or if we have a system that can stave off the obliteration. Apparently, Kaku and other people tell us, apparently the weapon system was so clever they now can wipe out the whole species.
Yes. Right.
Couldn't do that.
If we
Couldn't
can
do
prevent
that in the Second World War.
If we can
in your
prevent
lifetime.
that. If we can prevent that.
That's an existential challenge.
Yes, that's
and on
the
the
challenge.
other side is what I'm saying.
Imagine if we didn't have that burden and we could just think about, as again, the notion of post-scarcity.
Yes.
All children.
Say it again.
All post-scarcity.
Post-material scarcity.
Yeah, all children well-fed and well-educated, well-clothed, and humorously stimulated.
And ensconced within an ecological order that takes into account the whole system that we are in a liberation.
Well, how can we strive for any less than that?
But we do not have that now, and we're in threat of blowing up the whole thing.
Some of us.
Very seriously.
Yeah,
we could have one person set off a thing that would destroy
our
the
function
species.
is to stop those.
So this isn't the 13th century where time moves so slowly. We're at a time like pregnancy. The water's about to break. We're coming into a new kind of liberated condition.
It's always that way.
It always
was that way in the 13th century.
I don't believe that.
I think the human...
No, it's gestating.
Well, it's a matter of...
It's 9 months of gestation. You don't get born. You don't get born
well,
after 3 months.
I don't want to constrict this whole thing to just the birth of a single biological entity. I think that there's a larger emerging conflict of the 100 trillion. How many cells did you say?
100 trillion cells in
That's
a
all.
human organism.
That's all.
All. That's bigger than the internet.
Okay, well listen.
And they all count.
Okay.
And they're all overlaid with
Fine.
DNA. And they all function as a system.
And they're in motion.
That's what we could have.
And they're in motion.
And we don't have that now. We've got outdated systems, the political system.
But that
and
changes.
this is one of the real dangers because they're caught within a system
Well,
that's
look,
outdated.
you know what Woody Guthrie had on his guitar?
What did he have?
This machine fights fascism.
That's right.
All right, that's what this film is about.
Right,
This film fights fascism.
Okay.
Giuliani may embody a kind of authoritarian fascism. I'll go that far to say that he has the potential for. He made some statements the other day about the NSA spying stuff about Gonzalez and this incredible. Can you imagine suspending the writ of habeas corpus? Giuliani's all right.
We don't need no stinking habeas corpus.
Giuliani's all right with that, and that's not good.
Torture,
of course,
Mr. Torture.
Bush doesn't understand it, can't comprehend it. Giuliani does. He's listen. Giuliani was magna cum laude at NYU Law School. You don't do that by accident or by intuition. You do that by hard study. Well, he was the editor of the Law Review. That's hard. You don't do that by hanging out and drinking beer. So he's got at least he has had the text through his cerebellum.
Yeah, you got this film, and let's talk about the films. But
Sure.
You got your chops, you got your thing. We're talking about creativity. You're really good, and I tried to bill you as one of the best because I watched the whole thing, and it was intriguing. It was absolutely great, both technically and creatively.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's a distinction there or not.
It's a great
subject. And then
subject.
also, and it's so incredibly timely. Because that man's being considered by a lot of people to be the president of the world.
There was an editorial in the Times today.
Right. Yeah, and he seems to be the front runner now.
He is.
And this bio you give of him is one that really shows him for what his core values.
And we couldn't do nearly all.
It's very timely. Yeah.
I think it's instructive. I hope that the film can, as he, in a couple of weeks from now, it's now April 2007.
This is April 12th.
He's going to be announcing his formal.
Yeah, within a week or so, I think.
Right. So once that happens, and then there's some talk that Hillary Clinton may call Giuliani before her Senate committee to look into what happened on September 11th. What actually happened? What actually happened with the cleanup down there? Now, Wayne Barrett, who's a prominent contributor to the film, is in the film a great deal, has a new book out with Dan Collins called Grand Illusion, which is an investigative look at 9/11 and what Giuliani actually did. It is scandalous.
Okay, are you picking up at all on the 9/11 truth thing, Webster Tarpley and these people? You're not. You do not countenance any of that.
I haven't studied it carefully.
You have not?
No.
Deliberately or not? Because he was seen as a great hero of that.
Well, he's seen
that's part of the myth.
It's unbelievable. The secular sainthood is incredible. How I get occasionally wind of people progressive type intellectual types, if you will, people who should know better, talking about how 9/11 changed their impression, however fragmentary and weak it was about Giuliani, and they think he actually did something on 9/11. And you know, it amazes me that given what actually happened, I had to study it for
you studied 6 years. You really studied this thing. You've really gone into it. In depth,
well, we were very, very, very close to the end of the editing process when 9/11 happened.
Really? Okay. Oh,
we started in '99,
right?
And so by September 11th of 2001, imagine we had been at it, and we were 3/4 of the way through, and then 9/11 happened. And of course, that changed a lot for us, and we had to go back and bring in 9/11 with the concluding movement of the film. And there was another film made about Giuliani called Rudyland, a documentary that was made by some serious filmmakers. It was a good film, and then because of 9/11, they went back and they re-edited the film. And I went to a screening of it, and I heard the filmmaker say 9/11 changed them. And I thought,
oh, they had done it themselves, the filmmaker.
Yes. I thought, what is wrong with you? What did he do on 9/11? And I find this with liberals and people who should know better, telling me how they were traumatized on 9/11, and Giuliani was a palliative. He actually did something to make them feel secure.
Well,
and
he marched on the streets, and
but I was there.
He was a hero.
I was up the block. I was there. I mean, what are you talking about?
To the
then to watch David Letterman talk about how he was the personification of courage, I go, what planet are you people from?
Yeah.
So, you know, this residual notion that Giuliani is America's mayor, you know, that he's the hero of 9/11. He goes around and trumpets that to some humorous things.
Well, they would try to run with that if they could, because
all they have.
It's good PR.
It's all they have.
And they've also got a basic right-wing message, you know.
Yes.
The problem with New York is squeegee men.
Well, they're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were largely gone in the Jenkins.
And the homeless. They're the ones who are causing all the trouble because they don't get out there and work hard.
Right. They don't
that
work
kind of thing.
Well,
Arbeiten macht frei.
Yes. Well, his head of the welfare administration, Jason Turner, actually said that.
Yeah.
He says it in the film with an interview with Brian Lehrer. He actually said, "Work shall set you free."
Wow.
That was the operative notion. That
right over Auschwitz.
Yes,
right
or the
gate.
doors.
Yeah.
You know, in Buchenwald. I actually filmed that on the gateway.
You got a piece of that in the film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So the operative notion. It's the old time thing. It's nothing new. It's the old reactionary notion of punishment.
Yeah.
That the film is really, the thesis of the film is Giuliani, aside from the personality and aside from his own personal history, Giuliani is the instrument for the final attack on the Rooseveltian New Deal. They would utterly destroy the remnants of New York City as the welfare state.
Yeah.
So 660,000 people, 2/3 of them children, thrown off welfare, lost their benefits. We have many illustrations in the film. People lost food stamps and Medicare.
Clinton signed on.
He signed on to it.
Signed on, and the whole day.
That's right.
It's their fault for not working. You got every opportunity. This the thing. Go out and work, and by your own labor and by your own effort, you can build yourself up. And it doesn't have anything to do with the social order or anything like that. That's okay. We're taking care of that. Everything's there, and so it puts all the onus on the poor.
Yes,
I noticed.
It
doesn't put any onus on the well-to-do.
It's the same old story.
Sorry, it's been like that since Roman emperors.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
That's right. But you know, Gingrich says it in the film. You know, they balanced the budget because they've reduced the welfare load. So the equation is there. It's for all to see.
Yeah, and it's deeply ingrained in him. You can see it in much of the footage you have. He believes that. And a lot of people want to believe that.
It's easy to believe.
It's a Puritan ethic, all kinds of ethics, the work ethic, all that kind of stuff, which has been, I would hear to say, outdated by the zeitgeist. That is an outdated concept.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't have all the technology owned by a few people and everybody else be slaves picking up leaves on their estate and call that democracy. We do not have a democracy. We have an oligarchic plutocracy
but we still have
running this country and the world, do we not?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and he would want to be one of the people who would run
he
for
thinks the system's
the
just
role
fine.
of emperor. Yeah.
It's bootstrap capitalism is the best, you know, all these home ownership, forget about all these, you know, what happened with this mortgage imbroglio we're in now.
Yeah.
But I think Giuliani certainly buys into what this standard sort of quasi-conservative Republican notion of what the American capitalist system.
And that could become attractive to people because people will flock to authority when they feel fundamentally threatened, and people are
Yes.
they're just laying off all kinds of people all over the place. They're outsourcing to China. Everything's going. There's no labor unions anymore. Under 8% private sector. There's no thing. So it's just free game. It's pig heaven.
Yes.
For the people that have the hedge funds and the capital and
Why don't
everything,
you
and
just
they're
call it
getting
what it
richer.
is? The 1%.
Yeah, that kind of thing, and it's been like that. So you do that. So we got to move with the film. We got a
Yeah.
clip we want to show, right?
Yes.
And I guess you worked on this for 6 years.
Yeah, it started in '99. 3 days after we began, I was sitting with, we began shooting in early '99. Amadou Diallo was killed.
Yeah, right.
So that's where
You got
we
that
were.
piece in there. Yeah,
right?
go ahead. Yeah.
And a few days later, I was out in Long Island. We were interviewing then William Bratton, who had been the police commissioner. And so it started there. And every week from that moment on, there was another huge, whether it was the Brooklyn Museum or Dorismond, or there was always, excuse me, there was always another enormous sort of explosion with Giuliani's behavior.
Yeah, crackdown.
So we started out thinking about First Amendment issues, and we ended up doing everything from welfare policies to
just selling art on the streets.
yes, the street
Letterman,
artist.
what's his name? That
Robert
guy,
Letterman.
Robert Letterman.
He
stood
fought
up
the
to
battle
that.
to the Supreme
They
Court.
took it to the Supreme Court and won finally, right?
That's
Thank
when-
God the courts are there, maybe, huh?
Can you imagine what Giuliani's take was on that? Art is not expression covered by the First Amendment.
Besides, that's not good art.
But that, right.
That's terrible
But
art.
you see,
yeah.
you think of Giuliani, the daddy state,
daddy
led by
state,
run by
God
Mr.
daddy
Security, who's got all that experience at the Justice Department, and his legal positions are for the most part ludicrous.
Right.
Whether it's with street artists or whether it was with welfare policy, he probably lost more law cases than any other executive in the history of the country.
And the man's running for president.
And he's
of
running
the
for
world.
president
All
on
right, so
on
that's it.
9/11.
So what could be more timely and sort of now? The documentary itself, you got your chops, you're that, and you call it Giuliani Time.
Yes.
It goes almost 2 hours, I think,
Yes,
right?
it's 118 minutes.
It's a fantastic piece of work, and I see that you're having some difficulty in terms of this being shown.
Yes.
Why is this not on Turner Classic Movies and IMF?
well, let me ask you this.
International,
You've seen the film.
Sundance. Why isn't it in all the why isn't it being picked up by the progressive community? Why isn't it being picked up within the political process and so forth? And I think it's destined to be so. I'm proud and honored to have you as a guest at this time on April 12th of 2007, because I think this film is going to be crucial in terms of the time moving ahead politically
thank you.
and creatively.
I hope you're right, Harold, because I still cannot understand why, for instance, this film was rejected by the Tribeca Film Festival, by Sundance, even by
All the
Woodstock.
progressives.
They all
the
just did,
progressives,
it's
right?
another biopic.
Yeah.
We're not interested. And you know what the problem is?
What?
There's a lot of sympathy for Giuliani in the
There's secrets
in the
in
strangest
paper,
places.
Yeah, it's just like there was in 33. I went back when David Gray Griffith. I've looked at some of this 9/11 truth stuff, and I went and David Gray Griffith laid this thing out. I went home and I read William Shire, and the Nazis.
I'm reading it again now.
Nazis were involved in that. They were involved in the 33 bombing.
You mean the
of
Reichstag fire?
Yeah,
They did it.
they were involved.
Of course.
And he got 97% approval by 1937.
That's right.
That's a danger.
Yeah. Well,
It's a
you
real
read the-
danger, and people will flock to daddy authority.
Yes, I mean,
if
look,
they're
you
scared.
look at the PNAC report that they issued in '98, or later, was it when they talked about the need for a Pearl Harbor-like incident?
Yeah, well, that's David Ray Griffith.
Yeah,
wrote the
that's
book
all
on New
there.
Pearl Harbor. That's innate impact. That thing, that 9/11 truth, there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening there.
I agree.
I mean, it's hard to think it could be that dark, but they did it in other places, and anyway. So, okay, you got your film. Now, you got the film. Now, talk to the
let me just say this to you.
Yeah, we got to get to the clip.
There's a kind of a parallel thing going on here, which I think that with the collapse of the World Trade Center and that catastrophe, I think that the Bush administration is having a similar
collapse,
imploding on its own footprint.
Iraq
it is unbelievable.
The neocons.
They're disgraced. It's everybody.
I think
Gonzalez next week is gonna bring it all down. So I don't know. I'm curious about what's going to happen here with Giuliani's leading the pack. He's in front of Hillary in most places, in polls, and McCain is just falling off the edge of the earth.
Seems that way.
And I'm wondering what's going to happen when Bush goes, because I'm convinced Bush will not be president by this June.
by this June.
By this June of 2007. He's
will
going.
not be president. What do you mean? You're going to be
I think it's going to be an
what?
impeachment. It's going to be a Nixon thing, and it's going to be worse than Nixon.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me you have to have some sort of a sexual something, a blowjob or something to get impeachment.
Well,
I mean,
maybe that's the way.
You can go out and kill millions of people and everything,
It
but
doesn't
unless
count.
you have a blowjob or something,
Yeah.
you don't get impeached.
Well,
you
I
know?
think that from Katrina to Iraq to Gonzales and the Justice Department, there are just so many manifestations of it's beyond incompetence. Right. And I think the Democrats in control and the subpoena power is going to bear some fruit real soon. Gonzales next week. Well, it could melt down so fast when they find out what's really been going on. The discovery, for instance, that the Justice Department is now riddled with lawyers that came from Falwell's Liberty University in positions of power. Number three.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to get into it. Maybe so. Well, that's interesting, and but I've been feeling like that for a long time. I got Thule Kupferberg.
Yes,
you know Thule
of course.
He gave me the thing. He said, impeach the president, generic. You know,
all of them.
Clinton signed on to the welfare to work.
Yep.
You know, all that stuff. They still got the same thing. But let's get to the film.
Yes.
Film. It's 58. You've put it out. It's been shown and so forth. Now we're going to show just the beginning of it, and we're a little constrained here with time and so forth. So we're going to run the first 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes or something like that of the film to give people a taste of it. And I want to say that they are encouraged. All distributors and people who can get this out should be encouraged to look at this film and think about getting it out.
Well, I think that at the moment,
masse.
the important thing is that that it exists as a DVD.
Yeah, let's show them. Let's see if
DVD,
I can hold it up. Maybe you can come in.
You can only get it online.
And
it's not being advertised or promoted. The distributor is somehow.
This is what it looks like. It's a great logo. Who did the logo?
We did.
You did. You did it yourself?
Well, no. Williams
Your
Cole.
team.
I should mention my team.
Yeah, give
Williams
credit
Cole,
where
a wonderful
I don't know if
co-producer.
This is not robotic. I guess. You can see what it looks like.
The best editor of all time, Peter Took.
Really?
5 years of just nothing else, few or no vacations, and very hard, labor-intensive time. Sam Cullen, an associate producer. A lot of people did this.
Yeah, you can give a lot of credit.
You know, and
this is only available online?
Only available online.
It's not in Blockbuster and stuff?
Number 3 on Netflix.
Okay, Netflix number 3. That's big. That's
in the New York area without any
big.
advertising.
And Blockbuster, can you get it?
You can get it anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
Amazon,
but
Yahoo.
What you want to get is distribution on the major channels if we can. There should be distribution on Independent
they won't
Film
show
Channel.
They won't show it on HBO.
Home box office.
They won't show it.
Well, why?
Because Parsons is the head of Time Warner.
Well, Parsons.
They own HBO.
Well, all right, they own HBO, and they put out Spike Lee's thing about
They won't put this out.
Okay, but they might.
They won't.
Well, okay, we'll see. That's a very important question.
Yes.
I might say.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen.
You can notice Mr. Parsons on the dais, on the platform, at both of Giuliani's inaugurations.
Well, these people are all of them.
Time
so
Warner
they all belong
owns-
to the club.
Well,
I
there
mean,
you
and
go.
that's Democrat and Republican and the leading edge,
the corporate. That's the
Praetorian
thing
Guard.
about Giuliani. It's the corporate sector.
Right.
He is their instrument for.
The day after we taped this program, and we're going to an old program with David Corton, who said the corporations run the world.
That's it.
Yeah, well, that's it.
It's
Okay.
that corporatism equal fascism.
Yeah.
There's your equation.
Well, okay.
That's what they said.
We don't want to go into that. So anyway, so we're going to run that now. So if we could set it up in the booth now and run that, but we're going to run a bit, and then
Just
we're
the
gonna,
opening movement.
We're going to. We can run 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes. I want the people to get a good taste of this. And so we're talking with it's the producer and director of this really important film, Giuliani Time, and that being Kevin Keating. And so if we could set it up and run the beginning of that tape now. Thanks.
Capital of the world. These are times when leadership is the most important. On September 11, I looked up and seeing the flames of hell emanating from those buildings and realizing that what I was actually seeing was a human being that was jumping out of the building, and I was stunned. Without really thinking, I grabbed the arm of then Police Commissioner Bernard Carrick, and I said to him, Bernie, thank God George Bush is our president. Thank you.
Giuliani can be said to have achieved what many thought was not possible in a place that many were convinced had seen its best days. It was a city of menace and mayhem, of fear and loathing, of lawlessness and misery. He spied a shining city on a hill. The mayor has brought joy, safety, and greatness back to New York. Gone is the tangible sense of foreboding, and yes, too, gone are the squeegee men. It is nothing short of the Rudy Revolution. In every way, Rudolph Giuliani is a true heir of the Reagan legacy.
Thank you. In the 20th century, there have been two critical realigning elections. The election in 1932 that elected Franklin Roosevelt to the White House, and the election in 1980 that elected Ronald Reagan. Both were the architects of revolutions. Political philosophy, very different. And President Reagan has had a lot to do in the formation of my thinking, the ideas that I have, and the things that I've put into place. He warned about the dangers of always looking for a government-controlled collective solution to a problem. And he changed the mind of America about this.
A few timid people who fear progress will try to give you new and strange names for what we are doing. Sometimes they will call it communism, and sometimes socialism. We'll call it something that is really very simple. The right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to adequate medical care, the right to a good education. A second Bill of Rights. And after this war is won, a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all.
Magic moments, memories we've been sharing. I'll never forget the moment we kissed the night of the hayride. The way that we hugged to try to keep warm while taking a sleigh ride. Magic moments, memories we've been sharing. Magic moments when two hearts are caring. Time can't erase the memory of these magic moments filled with love.
Rudy Giuliani was born in a tough working-class neighborhood in Brooklyn called Pigtown. This is the home Rudy lived in until he was 6. And you could see Ebbets Field out of the back window where the Dodgers played. And everybody around here was a Dodger nut. Everybody except Rudy. It was a very intertwined neighborhood, very Italian, very Catholic. This is where Rudy's father, Harold, and mother, Helen, came to live after they got married. Rudy had uncles who were cops. He had uncles who were firemen. Rudy's father, Harold, basically didn't have a job when Rudy was first born. He worked a bit at the Navy Yard. He was supposedly a plumber's assistant. It was a door-to-door salesman, whatever he could pick up. Until they opened the bar in 1948. It's called Vincent's. And it's just a few blocks away, very close to their house. Rudy's Uncle Leo, one of Helen's older brothers, was really the force behind the bar. And Harold works for Uncle Leo until about 1962-63. It was a big bar. They had a wire room downstairs. They were running a numbers operation. They were running major gambling operations out of here. And Harold was the guy who broke the hands, who carried the baseball bat, who carried weapons, guns, knives. They had a gun underneath the bar. And you came in here, you got your money, and you came in here and you made your payments, your loan shark payments. And if you were short, this is where you took a hit. I interviewed a cousin who was 14 years younger than Rudy, who certainly understood it was a wise guy kind of hangout. She understood that her Uncle Leo, she said, he's mafia. We all knew her Uncle Leo was mafia.
My father was almost compulsive about being honest. He would tell me, never take anybody else's money, make sure you always pay for things. I mean, he wanted to make sure that I didn't make the same mistakes that he believed he had made.
The first thing I learned from this source that worked in the bar all those years ago was that Harold Giuliani talked about having done time in prison. And the trail winds up here at Sing Sing because he does a year and several months in this prison in 1934, 1935 for an armed robbery conviction, a serious felony conviction, a very tough maximum security prison. But it didn't have much of a deterrent effect because we do know that starting in 1948 he began the life of crime out of the bar in Brooklyn, but he just never wound up busted again. And to be living so close to it was not the environment that Harold wanted to raise Rudy in. So they make their move out to suburban Long Island.
So you see, it's good, you know, because you got to think there where he's a mafioso. There's a mafioso up front. That's hard to come over. You know? But I mean, in a certain sense, it seems to me that's an interesting thing because the whole world's set up. It's like a bunch of mafia dons fighting for the right to have the protection business to intimidate and the citizenry. It's a big protection racket between the various people running the political entities that run the country and the corporation.
That's a metaphor.
It's a good background to be a wise guy.
Yeah, that's a metaphor for capitalism, I think.
A metaphor for the way the world is set up.
Some
it's a
of
few people with Swiss bank accounts who owns everything, and it's all that's what I'm saying. So that's it's like a mafia don isn't a bad model for a president.
Well, you know, the interesting...
or president of the world, as he says.
Yeah, Giuliani still gets a great deal of pleasure. He does this repeatedly. He goes in front of audiences, not the part that we have in the film with him in drag, repeatedly with Donald Trump, which has been all over YouTube. As of this morning, there were 250,000 viewings of it. It was on the Daily Show last night.
On the Daily Show, the
yes.
thing on drag. Well, that's that's the kind of thing that gets played.
Yes,
but I mean,
it's not that. It's really about his, people have asked me why would you hold him responsible for the sins of the father, and I say, well, I don't.
No,
in the film, what we do is we bring forward not that Harold Giuliani, his father,
Harold
did time
is a
in
problem.
Sing Sing.
That's
not
name.
the problem.
That's my name. That's my name.
Well,
Harold. It's
yeah,
a proud
it's a
name.
lovely
It's
name.
disappearing.
Yeah, we don't want to taint you with
search
that.
it.
We don't want to taint. We're not going to taint Rudy
I'm
with
sensitive. That's
Yeah,
all on that. Be sensitive.
Are you sensitive to the name Lewis?
No, I'm sorry.
Well, that's the real name.
Kelso is
No.
a nice name. That's a
No,
good
Louis
name,
Devanzo is Giuliani's uncle who owned the bar.
Oh, I see.
He's the real mafia guy.
So what was Harold's role?
Harold worked in the bar as the bartender.
He was sort of
He used to, they said, they told Wayne that on every other Friday on payday, he would go a couple of blocks away to the Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, off Nostrand Avenue, with a baseball bat or up into the locker room on payday
break a couple kneecaps,
to get the payback for the loan sharking operation.
Good training for
but
a
that's
mayor.
low level.
Oh.
Giuliani's uncle, Devanzo, had a son, Louis, who was Giuliani's first cousin, who he went to Bishop Laughlin High School with, who ended up running the largest stolen car ring in Long Island in the Eastern District, and ended up killed in a shootout with the FBI. But none of it turned up in his FBI vetting background report. You know what happened with Carrick? They didn't do the background report? Well, somehow Giuliani managed to going to the criminal division of the Justice Department, and Judge Harold Tyler told Wayne Barrett, he saw that report, and there was nothing in it about Louis Devanzo and Devanzo Sr. and the mafia ties of the family.
It's been expunged, huh?
One of the most important elements in this film, I think,
is bringing that out.
Is bringing that out.
Sing Sing, huh?
No, Sing Sing's nothing. That's Harold.
Okay.
What's really important are Louis Devanzo, the owner of the bar, and what happened with Giuliani not telling the Justice Department when he was obviously put on a polygraph. The first question they ask you is, have you ever been convicted of a felony? If you haven't, has anybody in your family? Evidently, he didn't say anything about any of that. So he's got a problem down the road, and it's not about being in drag with Trump, although that's fun.
No, but that's what they're going to hang him on.
They've
like
already
they did
done
with
that.
Mr. Clinton. Yeah.
I get emails.
It's so absurd.
I get alerts from newspapers in South Korea that Garrison Keillor just ran a column about the piece from the film that was on.
Garrison Keillor can be bitingly funny.
He was funny.
Yeah.
He said it's not Giuliani in drag with the dress that we've all seen. It's what's he wearing under the dress.
Yeah, right. That's Keillor.
Is it jockey shorts or is it Victoria's
Prairie
Secret?
Home Companion,
Right?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
So
yeah.
hundreds
But
of-
it's but the point is that he had a good wise guy, mafioso upbringing.
No, he was the prince.
Around the dinner table, and the things that you really imbibe. You imbibe those important values like break kneecaps
Well, I don't
and
know.
beat up on the little guy.
Who knows what he knew?
Well, I
Remember,
mean, he seems
he was
to
an
have
only
imbibed
child.
them.
He was an only child.
And he wants to be president to do that
He
to the
went
world.
to a Catholic education of Christian brothers, very strict, very academically rigorous, and he went all the way through NYU Law School. As I said, he was the top of his law school class. You don't do that by accident. Serious student. He was great.
If you had any experience in a mafia-run neighborhood, I mean,
Have
do they respect the Godfather? You've seen the movie.
Well,
It's a
of
great
course.
movie.
I
I mean, there's respect for the Godfather because he is, you know, that kind of thing. When the system breaks down,
Yeah.
a lot of people want a Godfather who's
To
going
take
to
care of
come in and
business.
break kneecaps
Yeah.
and take care of business
Take
and
care
get
of
some
business.
justice because the system's falling apart. So that kind of thing, that's the context within which a fascist system can sound palatable to the masses. They voted Hitler in.
Well,
He got 97% approval by 1937.
Of Hitler.
So there's a danger of fascism within this breakdown of the social organization and
Yeah.
so forth in our society now, and your film's trying to...
Well,
it's good to know that he had that upbringing, he inculcated those important values at the dinner table and so forth. To
Dinner
be
table, we don't know, but I think
Well,
Mussolini...
you know what I'm saying, in the family.
Yeah,
in the family.
Right. He
Yeah.
claims he didn't know, but look, he was an only child. He was the prince. He
Oh.
was the one that went all the way through the... he went to Bishop Laughlin High School,
Like
which was
Caligula.
a working class, Catholic, all on scholarships, right, from each parish. That's where he commuted to school from Long Island. He's not from the city. He went to school in Brooklyn, but he's from the suburbs. But I think that the orientation, the Catholic orientation, is an important part of this authoritarian predisposition that he has. And I think that as a president, he would, you mentioned earlier this notion of fascism. Mussolini was an intellect. Mussolini was a writer and a publisher of a newspaper, and was, at one point claims to have been a Marxist. Right? I think Giuliani has more of those kind of. He's
Italian.
he was an academic. Listen, when he was in college in Manhattan, Manhattan College up in the Bronx, he had a column in his school newspaper called Ars Politica. You read that today. His attacks on Barry Goldwater in the name of pro-Kennedy are unbelievably astute.
This is Mr. Giuliani?
Yes.
Okay. What?
He was a liberal Democrat. He claims he was against the war in Vietnam. He claims he voted for George McGovern.
And we got records of that?
Yes.
Was he there with Abby trying to levitate the
Well,
Pentagon?
you know who says that there may be some evidence? Norman Siegel. The
Yeah,
civil
Norman
liberties
Siegel's a great guy.
went to NYU Law School at the same time.
With
he says he was Norman Siegel claims that Norman Siegel was the leader of the nascent and small anti-war movement at NYU Law School. He said he never saw Giuliani anywhere. So Giuliani claiming to be a McGovernite in '72, I think leaves a lot to be verified.
You can find any evidence of that? Or you think there'd be something?
He didn't become a
sign of
Republican. He was an independent. He became a Republican just before he became Associate Attorney General under Reagan. And that's where he seems to have found his ideological
That's when he got involved in the prosecution side of things. And
well, you see, Peter King, the Republican congressman, says in the film, I used to argue with him. He was a liberal Democrat. And then as he went to the Justice Department in the criminal division, he became more and more conservative, more and more Reagan, from Nixon to Reagan. And I think, even now he's being critiqued for being too moderate, for being too liberal because of his position on choice.
You got the choice thing, yeah.
On gun control and gay marriage.
Yeah.
And he's holding on to that. I'm surprised he's holding on to it. So I think he's going to run to the center. I think he's going after the Reagan Democrats. He's going to be elected by Democrats. That's how he's going to beat Hillary. He's going to siphon off the centrist Democrats who believe that he actually cleaned up the crime in New York, that believe...
The crime cleaned up all across the country,
Of course it did.
It did. Is that a fact,
That's
right?
true.
We don't bring it up.
The crack
It wasn't
epidemic receded and
But
disappeared.
he did get people out there arresting squeegee men, all
Yes.
12 of them. They're
Quality
out
of
there.
life.
And breaking up and really rousting the people that were sleeping on
Well,
the streets.
Attorney General Spitzer did a report, and you saw the street crimes unit, the hundreds and hundreds and
What'd they call
hundreds, the street crime unit.
They had a term for that, though. They called it
Zero
something.
tolerance.
Zero tolerance for
stopping and frisking.
For being poor.
For being
Poor.
Well,
Symptoms
essentially.
of being
Didn't
poor.
happen to white
It
kids.
is illegal to be poor.
that is...
And you're going to get busted for that.
You get busted because you look like you don't have any weight in terms of complaining.
And you don't have any political weight,
No.
do you? So you might as well beat up on the little guy because then you can make the
look,
people feel safe.
They had numbers.
They're respectable,
You know, what was
genteel
Amadou
society.
Diallo doing in his doorway that night?
41. That piece you've got in there where the woman counted off the 41 bullets.
The poet.
The poet.
At the demonstration.
It was really beautiful.
It still brings me to tears.
The film has really got pieces in it that are just really staggeringly gorgeous.
It
It's a
was-
beautiful piece of work.
Thank you. I mean, I think the enormity of the subject, one, I hope we did justice to it because it goes in so many directions. From the attack on the Brooklyn Museum, or the incredible number of
The artists,
the street artists who were
or art.
arrested.
Art that isn't, it's all like Stalin's
I mean, do
social-
people remember that he actually named what he called a decency commission?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? How the absurdity of it all. I mean, now that it's a few years have separated us from that time, people who see the film just can't believe that we
had
went through
sort
that.
of thing. Whenever you get a thing like they had socialist realism. Remember they had socialist realism, and it had to be something that had a social. I mean, as soon as you get the politics, and they had a heck of a time, Picasso, to do the Guernica. They had to really. He didn't want to do it. Artists are often not involved in that, but if they want to be, they should be.
Yeah.
And can be,
sure,
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to have the authorities saying
Well,
what is
listen,
art
Giuliani is a
really
great supporter
dangerous.
of the arts.
Because it's all geared toward kitsch and what's valuable in terms of ad campaigns and things like that. It's not really it's not the business of politicians to talk and make a critique of art.
Well, he had.
We're in serious trouble if
in-
that becomes.
Look what
come on.
happens. You have a situation where the Brooklyn Museum had the sensation exhibit. It was put together, sensation, to cause controversy.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he took the bait. Donahue from the Catholic League called him up and said there's an incredibly anti-Catholic painting in the show. And although Giuliani never saw it, he went on a rampage. He went on a tirade that came to, if you don't remember this, Giuliani stated he was going to evict the Brooklyn Museum from its location.
That's interesting.
He actually did that.
Yeah.
And the 2 million artifacts they have in their Egyptian
That's
collection.
BAM, right?
The Brooklyn
Big
Museum.
Art Museum.
No, that's
yeah.
not BAM. It's
oh,
the
not
Brooklyn
BAM.
Museum.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's
yeah,
like
go
the
ahead.
Metropolitan.
Okay, yeah.
I think Giuliani's on the board of the Metropolitan. He's a great supporter of the arts. I think the amount of money that went to various arts organizations during Giuliani time was increased appreciably.
Really?
So there's many in the arts community, some aspects of it, that think Giuliani's a great patron of the arts. Opera, certainly. So, but you know,
the
when
emperors
I'm
of
finding
Rome were
that,
patrons of the arts, mostly with statues of themselves.
well,
No.
yes, people's reaction to the film. It had a very, very abbreviated theatrical run, and then it was suspended to make room.
You're talking Giuliani Time?
Yes, the film.
Yeah. Well, it's only, when did it come out?
It was released in last May at
May.
the Landmark Theater. It ran only for 2 weeks. It did
That's
very
a-
well. It did extremely well in terms of box office.
Yeah.
And no advertising. The distributor did not advertise it. And it generated an enormous amount of press. Four
Why
stories.
has it not been shown at film festivals, and why is
Well, it has been at some.
Well, okay, but I mean, really
Europe.
seriously, why isn't it on the independent film channel, Sundance, that kind
Don't
of thing?
know.
You've been in touch with them and tried
Don't know.
to see it?
Don't know.
and
That's the
everything?
function of the distributor. As I said, Tribeca turned it down, Sundance down.
Home box office?
Down.
Well.
Rejection. It's okay. I mean, people still are seeing this film increasingly. I find people are shocked.
Don't you think it'll be picked up, particularly as the political season
Yes.
grows, because of the timeliness? You've been 6 years writing that film, putting that film together.
We started in '99.
Seven years. You come, and it comes out so timely, a thing that it could be picked up and widely distributed, particularly as the political season heats up.
Well, the Daily News said it well, I think, last year. They said people in Giuliani better hope that people in Iowa don't see this film.
People in Iowa
Because
should
I
see
think
it.
it has a...
Well, if he's reaching out nationally, they should see it.
Of course.
Yeah.
With the presidential campaign beginning in earnest now and compressed and becoming accelerated, I think the film is going to have an educational value. I hope what happens to this film is like what they did with Inconvenient Truth. Let it have its theatrical, let it have its DVD run, and at some point, someone gets aware of its value educationally and puts up the money to distribute them free.
Well, that took a long time. I can remember reading, what was it, Earth in the Balance. read the whole thing. Gore put out decade ago, 2 decades ago, a decade and a half ago, and he was doing ecological stuff, and it just sat there, and nobody paid any attention to it, and all of a sudden,
it becomes critical mass. Something happens.
A critical mass,
well,
and it happens.
Giuliani is leading the Republican pack for the.
Yeah.
I think he has a good chance of getting the nomination. I think there are problems with this Bernie Kerik thing. You saw in that piece. Can you imagine? I've never yet met a journalist who would agree that when he said to the Republican convention, when the bodies were falling, he turned to Bernie Kerik and said, "Thank God that George Bush is president."
Yeah.
I have found no one, including journalists who were there, that believes that happened. I don't think that Judith Giuliani believes it. I'm certain. I'd love to know if Kerik would agree that it actually happened.
Well, those are all things that can come out.
But it shows you what Giuliani will do on a world stage at the Republican convention. Tell probably one of the biggest lies in the history of the world.
You think politicians tell us lies?
Never. They're all going to be held accountable.
I mean, yeah, but they do, and also
George Bush would never lie.
The change is also that in those there was a time that Mr. Bush was riding a wave, and he is now a lost leader. I mean, he's a lost leader.
I think
it's
collapsing around.
It's collapsing. The whole thing
wheels
is
are falling
collapsing
off
around him. Yeah.
And he
so that might make it more opportune for somebody who's going to try to step into those shoes, into that context of quasi-fascist kind of view of the world, for a piece that would make like Inconvenient Truth, or something that illuminates the truth in a larger context. It seems to me your film is that, if I may suggest, and also, if I may, as a work of art, cinematography and of documentary art. It's the highest form.
I think it has a historical function.
And it should be seen all over, and I thank you very much, and I'm really pleased you've been able to put it together, you and the whole team.
Yes.
And I wish it all the very best, and I thank you, and I'm honored that you've been able to come in and share this hour with me and my audience.
Thank you, Harold.
And welcome very much to Manhattan Network and public access television as a distribution system, and this will be up on YouTube by the weekend.
Great.
So it'll be able to be seen by all the world.
Good.
Penguins in Antarctica will watch. Thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks, Harold.
Your pleasure having you're having the perceptions of we got Kevin Keating. He's the producer, director, the creator of a film that I think is destined to have a great deal of wide circulation within the society. Fought it hard, put everything he had into it, and it should be encouraged for one and all to get in touch with and back this film. People of all persuasion should be
go to
backing that.
GiulianiTime.com.
Giuliani Time, and there's a site, GiulianiTime.com. There's there, and it's going to be distributed. And welcome. It's very good. I've watched the whole thing, and it's really beautifully put together, and couldn't be more timely in terms of the evolution of world society. And I congratulate you enormously once again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Harold.
So we invite you to tune in. We'll come back again next time, but that's it for this particular segment. Again, I'm just going to stress that I think it's one of the best films that I've enjoyed. Maybe I was in the right mode, but it was really well done, and it was really it's up there right with my favorite movies, and so I put that kind of a credential. I don't know, that may kill it in the minds of some who think that
not
maybe.
in my mind.
Okay, well, there's two of us, right? Your pleasure. We'll come back again next time. So it really is. I watched it. I couldn't stop watching it, and I don't usually have that much time to be able to watch 2 hours long. But it really held the attention, and I should think it should be getting distribution in the networks and so forth. The independent film networks.
We'll see. I mean, I think it's dangerous territory for them.